Luca is Disney Pixar's newest film. It's a coming-of-age about a sea monster boy named Luca who goes on land to win a Vespa race so that him and his friend Alberto can travel and see the world. Before I go any further, I want to mention spoilers and that these are my opinions. It's a solid coming-of-age story, which means there's not going to be any major threat or action, but more so a homey, warm story that tells a message of family or friendship. I had a couple of thoughts when watching the trailer. What caught my attention, for one, was the animation. It's very reminiscent of The Good Dinosaur, so I immediately thought it was going to be similar in story as well. And boy, was I right. However, I'll give Luca just a little bit more enjoyment over The Good Dinosaur, which I honestly can't explain. Let's go over this story. The story is pretty solid. You're watching two sea monsters and their classic B-story friend, Julia, try to win a race so Luca and Alberto can get a Vespa. Luca wants to explore the world, Alberto does too, and Julia wants to win and end the reign of the evil empire of aircraft. There are some really great moments in Luca. There are some amazing, heartwarming scenes, which Pixar is really, really good at. And overall, this duo really shines. Their relationship, their bond, it just carries the entire film, and it's amazing. Now, the story is enough for me to watch. However, there was hardly or barely any stakes. We know that Alberto and Luca cannot be touched by water or else they'll turn into sea monster form, but that isn't enough to keep us invested. So yes, it got a little stale. I mean, you do have Luca's parents coming, but they did not pose a threat whatsoever. They barely add anything to the story. Also, it's never explained how in the world sea monsters can transform into humans. Like, how? And the beginning was incredibly rushed. We don't fully understand why Luca wants to go to the surface. He just sees an object and just go. That scene where he's scared to go up to the surface is so unbelievable. I understand what they do in the ocean, like fish, but what did he do every day particularly? Like, what's so special about the sea? I mean, at least Ariel actually had a good enough reason to not go up there. For one, she's a princess and she has duties, and look how fun it is. I would have just been jigging my butt off. Honestly, if watching over mindless fish every day is Luca's job, I would have ditched too. Now, it is cool to see how they have to dodge water, and we are constantly reminded of how the surface people, how much they eat fish, but that wasn't enough for me to be invested. And this is coming from the same studio who made Soul last year. A beautiful, also coming-of-age movie. And they made Toy Story. Pixar is well known for creating beautiful, intricate characters and plots that are astounding and hard to keep your eyes off of. But there were several times where I just wanted to scroll on my phone. The only thing that I kept thinking was, how does Pixar miss these mistakes of not adding more tension or character development when they have mastered these almost every time? It's insane to me how they missed that, and the fact that they never explained the sea monsters is just amateur. No, not even amateur mistake. Just a plain out cheap mistake. Let's go over the characters. We do get a lot of character building, especially with Luca and Julia. We get to know their likes, dislikes, and overall goals. Luca wants to explore the world and is relatively open to trying new things. Julia wants to win the race and she's very competitive. Alberto just wants to explore because he's, the chill type, wants to have fun. I liked how these characters stayed true to their personality. There wasn't anything that seemed too plot forced. But that one scene where Alberto popped up with the umbrella seemed pretty divisive. And the ending that made no sense, why Alberto didn't go, I wouldn't say Alberto was undeveloped, because I liked how his whole point of existence was a mystery. That one part kept me invested. And I liked how he got jealous, but it wasn't really believable. Like, how did it affect him? I didn't like how Pixar didn't address Alberto's controlling behavior properly. It went from controlling to suddenly not. There should have been some addressing, and telling about his father not coming back is not addressing that issue. So it did seem a bit plot-driven. Now, there was no point in the mom and dad. Yes, I understand how they are needed in terms of Luca running away, but they did not add anything to the plot. They didn't even come in contact nor slow Luca down. They showed up, came to the race, defeating their entire purpose. They could have at least affected the plot in some way. Also, Luca felt a little bit inactive for most part of this movie, but I don't know, maybe that could have been the point. He literally makes three choices. One where he comes out of the water and then end up, and one at the end where he decides to join Alberto, and one where he, chooses to frame Alberto for being a sea monster. It doesn't go on his side. Now for the worst part of this movie, the villain. The villain was so over the top, so cliche that it hurts. He wasn't threatening, nor did he add tension. This trope with this type of villain needs to die, and I thought it did. I thought we were over this. Honestly, this movie would have turned out better without him. He almost ruined this movie. That's how terrible of a villain he is. Let's talk about the actual world and the Italian premise. This movie does an amazing job for feeling like you're really in Italy. And I loved how they introduced new foods and even spoke Italian with the Silenzio Bruno. It was beautiful. I also been hearing that this movie is supposed to represent the LGBTQ plus community. I think it's more of an allegory for the LGBTQ plus community for the movie, since I don't remember seeing anything about the LGBTQ plus community or any topics with coming out of the closet. So I think it's an allegory. I have no issues with the LGBTQ plus community. I do have an issue with Hollywood profiting off of the community and not actual art. We need both. We need a beautiful story that is centered around a diverse culture and underrepresented community, not a terrible story that is centered around diverse culture and an underrepresented community. This happens time and time again in Hollywood. They throw together a terrible story, but coat it with a minority group or a different culture and think people will disregard the terrible mistakes just to get a buck. No, you need to write a good story around a diverse culture and underrepresented community, and stop profiting off of minorities. And this is coming from me, who is a person of color. Seriously, stop. Overall, it's a cash grab that has a mediocre story and a terrible villain. It just uses a culture and community to profit off of. It's not Pixar's worst film, but it's not their best. If anything, I'll put it with The Good Dinosaur. Some parts of this film I loved. It has some good scenes and heartwarming moments, but it's just not up to Pixar's standard, which Pixar is a reputable movie studio, and this just gives off cash grab vibes. This has been my review, and remember, it's just my opinion.